Hello everyone. You've made it to the Fury Warrior guide. This spec is a doozy. If you haven't seen it in my videos yet, so far I'm doing things a little differently this expansion, where when the rated season comes out, I will be making a Battleground Blitz and rated Battleground video, as well as a solo shuffle and arena video. So 2 different videos for each spec to really give you an all-encompassing view of how you would want to play that spec in the season, no matter what you're doing. Of course, I know that's not enough, because right now a lot is going on. We've got the new hero talents and the new play styles and the new talent reworks and all of this crazy stuff with BGs and skirms to test it in, and you just want to go now, because you want to be practiced and warmed up for the season to start. You don't want to just sit around and wait, and I totally get that. So I've made this PvP starter guide series, and I'm going through all the specs one by one that I personally feel very confident with. So, of course, that leads us to Fury. This thing is an absolute monster. Let's dive into it. We start with talents, and like all classes, I gave my talent builds some silly fantasy names so you can easily ask me questions, comments in my YouTube videos and my stream. Hey, does the Stormchaser build still use yada yada? And I can answer because I know exactly which build you're talking about. It just makes it easier on us and is super fun for me, so I have been doing that. So we have RECKSTORM and STORMCHASER. STORMCHASER being the Mountain Thane Lightning build, very fun, and the RECKSTORM just being a callback to the original Recklessness Bladestorm combo. Swifty, I think, coined this back a million years ago. Very old. But now we have Bladestorm back as Fury, so it made tons of sense to bring it back and name my Slayer build the RECKSTORM build. So let's talk about that one first. So yes, the Slayer hero talent, and of course, like all classes, the top is generally pretty locked in. Fury, like all classes, has general abilities that you need, Bloodthirst and Raging Blow, and the Execute for Fury actually generates rage instead of spending it. That's really cool. You have traditional mods, but you also have this survivability package right here in the middle. I take both of these talents because Fury is the definition of a grinder melee right now, which means stay in, apply your stackable Slaughterhouse Mortal Strike, do constant unhealable damage, and stay on your target with crazy mobility and lockdown damage, right? You just charge to them, leap to them, charge to them, and you just stay on top of them, and they can't really get you off of them. And the more you can do that, the more your win condition rises, right? So you wouldn't want to run behind a pillar because you're in trouble. So you would want to stay aggressive, and more survivability options helps you do that. So we've got War Paint, which gives you a perma 10% damage reduction because your enrage is almost active all the time. And then you just increase the value of your defensive cooldown. And of course, in PvP, your defensive cooldowns should be as valuable as possible. So we've got all that good stuff going on. In the middle, we've got this Rampage package where you have the ability itself. You have a way to make it do a lot more damage, and it's actually buffed in PvP, so it does even more than that. And then it gives you a haste mod, which is fantastic, actually, because if you've played any melee, this new expansion, of course, as your stats go way down when you just freshly hit level 80, that makes your globals very sluggish, and Fury does not want sluggish globals, but it has this haste mod right baked into its talent, so it can go a lot of mastery and a good amount of haste. Spoilers for the gear section, but then get even more haste to smooth out those globals and make that oppressive power even more so with the Frenzy haste buff. Okay, very cool. There's a Rampage package. You also have the Raging Blow package, which wasn't as good last expansion, but it's got some more synergies with the hero talent. Spoiler, Opportunist, where the more it can reset its cooldown, the more damage and crit damage it does, and you actually do have critical strike even if you're not geared into it, because you have Recklessness, right? The namesake of the build gives you critical chance on your abilities. So you've got Raging Blow charges and resets cooldown more often, then does more damage and resets more cooldown more often, and then when you reset the cooldown, it does even more damage. So a huge Raging Blow package to make that button really impactful. You've got the Rampage very impactful, and then you've got the Bloodthirst Bleed and all the bleed mods here, which perfectly interacts with Thunderous Roar, which you absolutely want to use in the bottom left corner here. And then Odin's Fury, which is in the bottom right corner here. So opposites right there. And that's all the bleed mods, as well as the Gushing Wound, not to be confused with BFA Season 4 Gushing Wound, which I just gave dramatic flashbacks to anybody who played that expansion. But yes, a lot of bleeds, a lot of sustained damage, a Rampage package, a Raging Blow package. It's all fantastic, and that is what you're looking at right here. But then you always have choices right down there at the bottom. And sometimes a little above that. I've made some choices around here. You can see them. But the capstones are a big deal. And my capstones may be unique. I actually think that they are unique to some builds I've seen going around. So, of course, I have to explain my thought process. So, first of all, because I'm going down to onslaught, I cannot grab the swift strikes for more haste. Instead, I grab the deft experience for more mastery and enrage extending, which keeps you in that enrage, which keeps you having that wall so it doesn't drop off if there is going to be any tiny downtime. That this helps make there to be as little as possible, which is great. Mastery is just a fantastic stat because it buffs all your abilities. But then I go down onslaught. There are some builds that I've seen without this. It still has a PvP mod unless they removed it, but when you hit a PvP training dummy and when you hit a player in PvP, it does far, far more damage than the PvE tooltip suggests. And that's even taking into consideration that your stats go up because your PvP item level goes up. They don't go up as much as this tooltip goes up. It goes from like 200k to 500,000 because it has a PvP mod. At least it did in Dragonflight, and it seems to have persisted, which means in a rated environment, when you get into 2s or 3s or Battleground Blitz or whatever you want to play, and you press this button, it is better than the PvE component, right? The PvE counterpart of this ability. So that's really fantastic. It just does a huge chunk of damage. I've seen it hit for 600k normals in PvP. Holy cow. Because it's not just a 600k hit that doesn't even spend rage. It actually generates rage, getting you to your next rampage. It then generates slaughtering strikes, which is this talent, which buffs your rampage. So onslaught generates rage, does a huge amount of damage, then gives you a super buffed rampage, which will then do a huge amount of damage. Wow, on a 17-second cooldown. It's an easy engine that you would want to add to any Fury build. So I've seen some builds without this, and I've seen some builds with it, I think. But it's hard to tell who's actually playing right now because, it's pre-game, so you could just look at the ladder, but then we don't know which of these guys have changed their build and which haven't. Anyway, I love it. I've played a lot of skirms against actually some pretty decent players because that's all we can play right now is skirms, and it's a surprising amount of damage on slot into Rampage during your cooldowns. It's scary, very scary. If this thing crits and the Rampage crits during Recklessness, which it can crit a lot, forget about it. Now you have to grab Bladestorm, again, the namesake of the talent tree, because you have Bladestorm mods in Slayer. So you've got a damage buff from Bladestorm, you've got a buff to your Rampage from Bladestorm, and we just talked about how many Rampage mods there are. Rampage is chunking with all these mods, it's fantastic. You just have another Bladestorm mod that makes it do even more damage, which is great, which is why I don't go all the way down to Storm of Steel, because the second charge would be nice, because I would have access to more of the mods from Bladestorm, but I would lose some of the damage, and it really does hit very hard right now. So I'd rather have the burst-oriented gameplay. Fury is very bursty. When you play it, you'll see. So I don't think you'll worry too much, but you can probably drop something for Storm of Steel if that's something that interests you. Then we have Reckless Abandon, which is on every Rampage, your Bloodthirst and Raging Blow just get hugely juiced. And this is great because you press Rampage every single time it glows, which means you're going to have Reckless Abandon juicing up that Raging Blow and Bloodthirst for your heal to do even more damage. And then your Raging Blow, you already talked about all the mods for that, right? So now it's going to get yet another mod from every single Rampage press, which you're pressing all the time. It's just a complete torrent of damage, and if you've ever dealt with a Fury Warrior, you know exactly how powerful it can be, and now you know why. This is right in front of you. I mean, this spec is unbelievable. Okay, so now you have to go down. Crit is not super good. Raging Blow getting even more crit damage is really nice, though. When this thing crits during Recklessness, it is a huge chunk of damage. And 2% crit to make that happen more often is not terrible, but you do have to go down that way to get Odin's Fury and the Odin's Fury and Rage and Whirlwind stack buff. This button is insane. When you compare it, or when you combine it rather with Bloodborne, so it gets that extra bleed damage buff, it is a huge amount of AoE damage. Then it procs your avatar, giving you a damage buff, and then it puts on a bleed that does a ton of AoE damage, and then it enrages you, deals more damage itself, so it's a huge chunk of burst, but then it also grants you stacks of Whirlwind, which means all your single target abilities now cleave for 2 uses, because you're going to have 2 stacks of Whirlwind. You could make that 4. You could actually make your next 4 abilities by going down to Meat Cleaver. You can see it just says next 4. That also interacts. When I press Apply Changes, I'll do it just to prove it, but if I press Apply Changes on the 4 stack of Whirlwind talent, it does make Odin say, yes, Odin's Fury now grants you 4 stacks of Whirlwind. So you could either go 2 or 4. I went the Raging Blow because my AoE is already so insane, and I wanted to add as much single target pressure, because that's what's getting kills, right? Finish somebody off with the biggest Raging Blow of all time. So this is what I run. But if you're in a BG or you are in a high cleave comp, maybe some Frost DK Fury Warrior sound pretty good, right? Or just, again, a BG with huge team fights, feel free to grab the Meat Cleaver talent instead of Raging Blow because it will impact Titanic Rage, which means, again, every time you press Odin's Fury, your next 2 or 4 abilities are all going to cleave. And when your Rampage is hitting that hard and your Raging Blow is hitting that hard, what if it hits everybody that hard? Goodness, dude. Okay, so yeah, that's it. That's the Fury tree. Every single thing I talked about is awesome. And I don't mean I'm awesome. I mean, this talent tree is awesome. I mean, you have so many fantastic synergies between your main buttons that are extremely easy to get off, right? It's very applicable to PvP. You don't have to like set some crazy combination up. You just run in there and do your damage, and man, you're happy that you did. And it only is buffed by Slayer. Slayer just gives you extra damage from Slayer Strike, which will be 3rd, I think, on your damage meters in AoE situations. It could honestly go up to 1st if you get a lot of procs and you're in a single target situation. So this just adds a huge chunk of damage. Then, like I said, you get the Bladestorm mod, where now pressing Bladestorm makes you do more damage. Wow, that's a good sign because you do a lot of damage. Then adding modifiers to everything is good. Sudden Death Generator is sweet because it allows you to execute, but execute for Fury just generates rage and hits really hard with both of your two-handed weapons, and then gives you a bigger Bladestorm. We love that. I ended up giving myself Relentless Pursuit, and it was such a game changer. You have a charge every 30-second completely clear you, which is crazy because the big thing is that if you were charged but you were slowed, then you get to them but you're too slow to stay on them, but now it just removes everything and gives you a sprint. Oh my goodness. So it's going to be very difficult for you to peel a Fury Warrior. Then we already talked about Opportunist rather, with the Raging Blow mods. This is the big Rampage mod. How many mods do you have as Fury? I mean, this is insane. Just a self-heal, which is great because you have tons of self-heal as Fury. This is just an Execute mod, which again, it costs no Fury, so you might as well just throw it out there and generate Fury while doing damage. Overwhelmed is your damage mod. Raging Blow damage increased by 30% is ridiculous, and another one of the insane reasons why I do end up going Wrath and Fury, because the more mods you can put into Raging Blow, the better. It just hits like a truck right now. And finally, this thing is so hilarious. You get this Bladestorm application of Overwhelmed, the whole thing that makes you do more damage. It's just this torrent of modifiers. But you also can kick and Stormbolt while Bladestorming, something that you have not had access to. So while you're in that Bladestorm, the one weakness generally you have, you're immune to all CC, right? So the one weakness you generally have is like, well, I don't have as much urgency. I can't kick a cast. If I'm Bladestorming on top of a healer, I'd like to kick his flash heal in my face, but I can't. So he's able to just cast. Not anymore. You can still Stormbolt a healer. You can still kick a healer. You can still kick a lock. You can actually do all of those things while doing your Deathball torrent of damage. So Slayer Fury, the RECKSTORM build, it's good. It's really, really good. It's probably nerfing coming good, but again, don't get discouraged. I think this could take a pretty, as long as it's a reasonable nerf, and still be S+ tier. So great spec, super fun to play, very, very fast. So in the sluggish new season, when haste levels are a little lower than you're used to, Fury still stays very fast. Okay, so now we're going into the Stormchaser build. And the Stormchaser build, okay, you know, Thunderstorm, Chase, because Fury chases you, like, it has a bunch of charges, has a ton of mobility, you're getting chased by a Fury Warrior, Lightning Storm, okay, pretty fun. Right, good, great, awesome. There's actually almost, this is the one guide that I'm going to put out where I have two different builds, but realistically, the only thing I'm changing is the hero talents. Now, this might be subject to change in the future when the tier set comes out with the new gear and the conquest gear and all of the changes that can happen from tuning and tuning passes, right? So that's why I wanted to name them different things, so we could further distinguish them if that needed to happen. But the talents that I have picked here for Fury, I have had so much success with that I didn't actually change a single one except one. For the Stormchaser build, you can see the only thing I did is drop Bladestorm for Unbridled Ferocity, because the Slayer tree is the one with all those Bladestorm mods, while the Mountain Thane doesn't really need it. So you have a lot of AoE cleave from Thunderstorm, giving you whirlwind stacks and now making all your abilities cleave. So instead of being in Bladestorm to cleave people, it's kind of better to just be out of Bladestorm so you can use your general rotation. And thus I got this Unbridled Ferocity, which is kind of like proc Ascendance if you've played Ellie Shaman, where every time you press Rampage, which is just a core feature of your rotation, you could get Recklessness, which is a nice cooldown. So every once in a while, you could just get a huge chunk of rage generation and crit chance for free. And we talked about how decent rage gen is because it gives you a million rampages, but also crit chance because Raging Blow has all those crit damage mods. So getting it to crit is just another huge chunk of damage. And when is it going to happen? After you press Rampage. And what happens after you press Rampage? You empower your Raging Blow. There it is, an engine, right? So you drop the Bladestorm for Unbridled Ferocity. You don't have to if you're obsessed with the Bladestorm being a CC immunity. That is a very, very good perk, but you can. The only thing you do have to change, and we'll talk about the full General Warrior talent trait in a second, but right now you actually have to drop a few things to get Thunderclap and the AoE Thunderclap extender, the radius and movement speed decrease. Because that is what the entire talent tree revolves around, is having Thunderclap. So you literally need to be talented into it. So you have one change in the General Warrior talent tree, which is getting into the Thunderclap line, and then one change over here, which is dropping Bladestorm for proc Ascendance, so to speak. Okay, so what does Mountain Thane do? Well, first of all, you get these thunderbolts, these lightning bolts, lightning strikes that just deal damage and generate rage. And rage generation for Fury is so fantastic because the more rampages you can press, the better. We've talked about that 6 times, and now will be the 7th. Also, these lightning strikes happen even more often from your general rotational abilities, Raging Blow, Execute, Thunderclap, and you're going to be pressing Thunderclap a lot because it's the whole juice of the hero talents during Avatar. And Avatar is your big window of damage, so having your lightning strikes come off more often on your big window of damage is only a good thing. Okay, so there's the major mechanic, lightning strikes. Now you've got this storm strike damage, which ignores armor, and that is very, very relevant in PvP because people have a lot of armor. So you get this Storm Strike and Nature Damage mod, which is really just about the hero talents itself. Then you get a huge juice up to Thunderclap, so you really want to press it. It gets Rage Gen, which is fantastic because I'm not going to say it in 8's time. And then you get all of those, the Whirlwind mechanics, the Meat Cleaver, the AoE from your single target abilities mechanic that Fury loves so much. You get it now from Thunderclap presses. So you can replace Whirlwind on your bar with Thunderclap, which I have done right here. It's number 4. Okay, so that's very fun. Now you get Lightning Strike AoE. That's fantastic. You get extra Rampage and Bloodthirst mods. Wow. Those are big abilities that you're juicing up with Reckless Abandon all the time. You get a little bit of a wall, and Thunder Blast extends that wall by a lot. You actually get a really cool shield for magic damage from intervening, or you could get AoE Stormbolt if you really need that. You do have Shockwave, though, so an AoE stun is not that important because it does increase the cooldown, but you could do it. Now, you can proc a Thunder Blast from your main rotational ability, where you get that Storm Strike damage and generate even more rage. So it's just a huge juice up to your Thunderclap that generates even more rage now. And the Thunder Blast calls a Lightning Strike down, and that's just even more proc damage. Then they generate even more rage, and then they give you another modifier to Raging Blow. And then you can give your Bloodthirst mod from those very same lightning strikes that you have 6 different ways of proccing right now and generate even more rage. So it's a rage engine, AoE engine, and proc damage engine, which is really, really good. If you remember, again, BFA Season 4 DH, they had their entire rotation proccing 60 other things, right? So when you proc damage on a sustained damage spec that has grinder mentality where it stays in, sustained damage, mortal strike, stackable mortal strike, right? That's actually a really good combination of tools. And it's all amplified by your boy Avatar of the Storm, where just when you press your offensive cooldown, you reset your Thunder Blast, Thunderclap, turn it into Thunder Blast, which is that big Rage Gen AoE damage that also calls a Lightning Strike. And then you can be getting Avatar anytime, just like you can proc Avatar from pressing Odin's Fury. Now you can proc Avatar just by pressing Lightning Strikes, or by proccing Lightning Strikes, which you can get from Lightning Burst, the Thunder Blast, all of this stuff, right? So you have an engine of offensive cooldowns, damage modifiers, damage proc, AoE damage, whirlwind procs that give you more AoE damage. It's awesome. It's actually awesome. And I am honestly, I would shed a tear for how well designed the Fury hero talents are. They both perfectly translate into a PvP environment. This is no Night Fae Covenant from DK and Shadowlands, right? This isn't something where you have to put a little something on the ground and hope they stand there for 10 seconds. This is really good on-demand proc-based damage that is extremely applicable to all situations, especially Battlegrounds, which with Battleground Blitz will be a lot more popular. So, boom. 2 fantastic builds. It looked like I put up 3, but that's because I have web fingers. 2 fantastic builds that you can play right now, and they should only get better as the season goes on because you get the more gear to juice them up even further. But remember, if they are overturned, and hey, look, I'm not a game designer. I'm not the game balancer. I'm not in charge of the decisions. If they are overtuned, I still think even some tweaking here and there, some tuning here and there, you're still going to have a ton of fun with Fury. And I say that wholeheartedly because I lived through the Ret rework and the Demon Hunter rework, and they took many, many nerfs and stayed very, very good. So I have history on my side. Whew. Okay. General Warrior Talents. Woo, this is going to be a long video. I talk a lot. Okay, so of course, you're not going to be in D stance a lot, but you should still absolutely have it. Well, you get it. So there you go. You get Intervene, which is just a nice answer for if your teammate is taking all the damage, you can intervene in wall. Stormbolt is your single target stun. I already talked about Thunderclap. We should probably go over... Oh, well, we'll go over to it at the end. Shockwave is an AoE stun. You have this entire line of mobility here. You've got Leap, short cooldown Leap with a sprint added on. Then you've got Double Charge and the reduced cooldown of charge. You've got Spell Reflection to reflect a big bolt or an incoming clone or an incoming poly. Reflecting clone is huge. You've got an AoE Fear, so you've got even more CC. This is a huge self-heal from Impending Victory. Absolutely have to take that. More movement speed. Rage Refund. We talked about Rage. I like this one because it's a cooldown on a lot of major things. It's a tiny amount, but it might add up since it's so many useful abilities. You go down the Thunderous Roar line in both because it does so much AoE damage. You go down Avatar because it's a massive cooldown, and then it procs... I hadn't swapped this one yet. It procs Odin's Fury, or Odin's Fury procs it. You run that on both builds. That was just that was something that hadn't been changed over from a previous build. Haste is great for everything. Auto attack, great for everything because you have 2 gigantic two-handed weapons. It's fine. It also, the faster you auto attack, the faster you get sidearm procs, which adds up to a little bit extra damage. When you have all this proc damage, it's pretty nice. 5% more damage, we take those. Rallying Cry is a big survivability button, and that's you have to go down either Crushing Force or Overwhelming Rage, and honestly, I believe that Crushing Force makes more sense. A little bit of extra Bloodthirst mod. Finally, you have a nice little armor chunk and a fantastic 70% AoE slow, which you can see is right here. It's AoE, you can press it at any time, you can get it on people around you, and with the PvP talent Battlefield Commander, it also roots. So now we can switch over to RECKSTORM. These sections go much, much quicker because I don't have to explain the entire talent build, rather just some utility and survivability buttons that pretty much everybody chooses. You drop Thunderclap and Crackling Thunder for another one of these Armored to the Teeth, which gives you more strength, and more strength equals more damage. And then I went with Leech and Pain and Gain, stuff like that. Realistically, any of these can be switched around because you have tools like Shattering Throw to get rid of Ice Block and Paladin Bubble. So anytime you see a Paladin or a Mage, you would want to talent into Shattering Throw. So you could get rid of the Leech, and there you go. Boom. That was easy, right? You can do stuff like that. You could even, if you're really scared of a Feral, or rather a Rogue, sorry, I had Feral on the mind. It's my next video coming out. An Assassination Rogue, right? They have those poisons. Maybe poisons are not all of their damage, but it is their Mortal Strike. So you can get a big heal and then remove poisons or 2 DKs, right? Because we have diseases. So you could clear off all this stuff on you and then pair it with a decent heal. It's a long cooldown. It's not a guaranteed auto pick because it's a 3-minute cooldown for 20% health, but it has merit. If you need that option, you can have it. You can do stuff like this. Fantastic. Now we talk about PvP talents. Slaughterhouse, I have mentioned quite a bit. Rampage, Onslaught, and Odin's Fury. So they actually added a few more ways to proc this. Now give you a stacking Mortal Strike effect. So the incoming healing is reduced. If you can get this up to max stacks, that's the biggest Mortal Strike in the game with 36% other than Sharpened Blade, which is a cooldown. This one is... it can persist a little bit longer if you stack this up very fast. And also that means it can also AoE Mortal Strike because you can AoE Rampage with Whirlwind stacks, and Odin's Fury is AoE, right? So you can just juice up that Slaughterhouse as fast as possible and then make it very difficult on their healer. Furthermore, you have Battlefield Commander, which buffs everything that you have, all your shouts. It's very cool. It's kind of flavorful. Gives you more stam to you and your team. Reduces the cooldown of your fear. Increases the range of Berserker Shout, which is, geez, God, where did they put that? I mean, that could be a remnant of the past. Oh, there we go. Thank goodness. This is an AoE fear removal. Yeah, that's why I really needed to talk about it. You can get your team, kind of like a Tremor Totem, honestly. You can get your team out of fear for free. Like, again, your healer is feared. He's feared by a lock. He's feared by an AoE fear. And you are about to lose the game. And on a 1 minute cooldown, you can get him out of that. I mean, that can just change the game. And this increases the range to make it even more landable. So yeah, very important that I talked about that. That's just a counter pick to comps with a lot of fears. Very simple. Then you have Rallying Cry, giving you another clear and a sprint to you and your team. So this is why it's so hard to keep a Fury off of you. Unbelievable. Piercing Howl actually looks like it's been changed from a root to the radius increase, which is probably super reasonable because an AoE root was pretty oppressive. So that's a little worse, but Battlefield Commander is still so good that you'd probably run it anyway. Plus a 70% huge AoE slow is nothing to scoff at. So that is a change from Dragonflight into War Within. And then Thunderous Roar makes everybody take 5% more damage when you put Thunderous Roar on them, which is just, yet again, another damage mod. So these two are kind of locked in for Fury. I mean, there's just so much output. This one is the variable. There's a lot of cool options here. You can go Big Master and Commander. This is Big Rallying Cry, reducing its cooldown even further and giving it even more effects. So now it gives you a huge amount of health and clears your snares and gives you a movement speed increase. So Master and Commander, just a nice utility pick. Disarm into Frost DKs. Meh. And, you know, probably other warriors with huge chunky damage. You can just disarm it. Demolition plus Shattering Throw, or Wrecking Throw, rather, is a nuke to Life Cocoon and Death Pact. Big absorb shields. You have Rebound, which is, I've actually seen somebody, when casters are very good and they have very, very powerful spells, sometimes the only way to win is by killing them with their own spells. So a huge Chaos Bolt being reflected and dealing 50% more damage than the Chaos Bolt would have done to you, to him. That's a pretty cool feeling. I have actually seen this run. Battle Trance is regen, rage gen, and health regen, as long as you Raging Blow the same guy twice. This was actually not used super frequently in Dragonflight because you didn't press Raging Blow that much, but now Raging Blow is a much, much better button, so you could get Battle Trance active, which gives you even more survivability and sustain rage gen. Just a lot of fantastic options. And Safeguard. And Safeguard is huge utility. 2 charges of Intervene, which means 2 charges of that shield from the Mountain Thane line. And damage reduction component, 20%. Whew. Okay, so that's that. The next sections should go by fairly quickly. For gearing, this is going to be the easiest section I've covered so far. Mastery and Haste. No crit at all. You've got the crit that you need from Recklessness and some other crit chance mods, and it's just a nerfed stat in PvP. But Haste is fantastic for Fury, with every global you have being the most awesome global in the game. And Mastery is fantastic for Fury because it increases all your damage done, because you're enraged almost all the time, if not literally all the time. So it's just a flat damage mod to everything. And when you do this much damage and you have this many damage mods, that's why you just go in and you slaughter everybody. Cool. Okay. So how do you do that? Well, what I did is I actually just went baseline Mastery instead of baseline Haste, because I have Haste from the Frenzy talent and some other mods, right? So I thought I had enough Haste, and I do. My rotation feels very smooth, so I went all in on Mastery and then only Haste on the choices between Haste and Crit, and that's what this is what that looks like. Mastery Helm, Mastery Neck, Haste Shoulders, Mastery Cloak, Mastery Chest, Mastery Bracers, Mastery Weapon. Mastery Weapon, of course, you're using 2 two-handers. That is non-negotiable. Single-minded Fury is awful. The Insignia of Alacrity, because your sustain is so high, you would never want to have a 1 minute go when you could have an always go. Haste Ring, Mastery Ring, Haste Boots, Mastery Legs, Haste Belt, and Mastery Gloves. And this is what that looks like. Huge chunk of Mastery, Verse on every piece because it's PvP gear, and a little bit of Haste that couples with your Haste hero talents to give you a very smooth rotation. And yes, it does feel that way. When we can craft gear. Fury generally wants to craft pieces without Verse on them, with Haste and Mastery, because you actually get so much Verse just from having 2 two-handed weapons. That's a huge stat stick, right? So you're going to have a lot of Verse once you've got full Conquest gear, and you're actually going to craft some of that down into Haste Mastery gear when that system comes out. But of course, I have to make a new video when the season comes out a little ways in, so wait for that. But when you're crafting your epics, just remember you're going to probably lose some verse to build up your haste and mastery and have even more obscene output. So that's gearing. You can do enchants and gems on the purple gear. If you do that now for skirms, I question that decision. But if you must, probably get the mastery enchants. So very good. We'll talk about that all in the next video when the season starts. All right, so rotational stuff. The rotation of Fury is very simple. You just press, well, you really just press glowy buttons, but you really want to get your Raging Blows out until you have max rage for Rampage, and then press it instantly. Every time a Rampage is available, press it. Every time Onslaught is off cooldown, press it, and then immediately press the Rampage that'll probably generate to make it buffed. You want to have Thunderous Roar and Bladestorm go out in your opener at some point for the modifiers, and you press Avatar to generate an Odin's Fury, and then wait and just use this Avatar and use all the globals that are juiced by the Avatar, and then Odin's Fury for a second shorter Avatar later. So what that looks like is charge in, Avatar over Odin's Fury, which will probably immediately give you a Rampage. Then you can Raging Blow, because it's going to be juiced, Bloodthirst, Rampage, Raging Blow, Onslaught, Rampage, get your Thunderous Roar out there, Bladestorm after those big juicy globals have all been expended, and then when you come out of the Bladestorm, you can Odin's Fury, which will be buffed by the Slayer Bladestorm. So cool. So let's take a look at that. Here we go. Dive in immediately gives you that Rampage. We got the juiced up buttons. We've got another Rampage. We've got the Onslaught. Now we're going to put on the Thunderous Roar. Then we got another Rampage. Then we're going to Storm, and that's going to do an enormous amount of damage. And then we're going to get another Rampage, and then we're going to Odin's Fury, and then we're going to get another Raging Blow, and we're probably going to get to that next Rampage with an Execute Rampage. Then we can get that Thunderous, Onslaught, and then the juiced up abilities. They all glow for you, so it's not hard to press. You're glowing, 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 and then you execute once, and then you're glowing, and then you have a Rampage, right? And it's just crazy, crazy damage. If you're in an AoE situation, you could also Whirlwind, occasionally throw that in there to make your abilities all cleave, as long as you have multiple targets to hit. The burst is obscene. In fact, your starting burst is off the global, maybe the only spec in the game that has that. Interesting. Yeah, it is off the global. You can charge in Odin's Fury Rampage because it procs from Avatar, which is off the global. Crazy. And all of your damage actually is buffed from this build in PvP. So when you go into PvP, you actually hit some of these abilities way harder, like Onslaught. It's just going to hit harder because of the PvP mod. Crazy. Phew. Okay. Now the only change between Stormchaser is that you have Thunderclap, and then every time it glows, you press it. So you have this ability. It's going to glow a lot. We'll do it one more time. It's going to glow a lot. You're going to press it. It's going to give you AoE single target abilities. So Rampage turns to AoE, blah, 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 blah. We've talked about it multiple times. It's also going to give you a Thunder Smash, and it cranks, and it's so fun. I swear this is the most flavorful button they could have added. I love it. So you press that. There's the Thunderclap. Get the Onslaught off. You get the Rampage out now. Then there. That glows again. Then the Rampage. Then the buttons glow. Buttons glow. Rampage glows. Odin's Fury glows. That's crazy how many glowing buttons are on this. You got to get the Onslaught out as well. Then another Rampage glowing up. You can get your AoE from your Thunderclap. It will probably proc again sometime. And then you would just press it because it does. There's that. See, it changes the icon a little bit and procs. And yeah. This build never runs out of damage. It hits actually like maybe highest burst in PvP right now. Very hard to tell. DK is up there for sure. And then there's some casters that can do some obscene shattery combos like Frost Mage. So in Aflock, oh, don't forget about Aflock. I underestimated Aflock. Okay, and there you go. Sorry for rambling. Thank you so much for watching my video. Fury Warrior is king, and I hope you have a wonderful time with it this season. Thank you again, and I'll see you in the next one.